Nana had never known what love from a mother felt like. She had no memory of her parents, only Madame Francis's voice, always sharp like a blade, echoing reminders of where she came from. "You were found like a stray dog, Nana," Madame Francis would hiss with contempt. "3 months old, dumped at the estate gate like trash. The foolish community came begging me to take you in, weeping as if you were some lost princess. I should have walked away. But no, I took pity. I gave you food to eat, clothes to wear, and a mattress to sleep on. Not a mat on the floor, but a mattress, like my own daughter would have had, and yet don't you dare forget your place." Every word cut deeper than the last. "You are not my child. You are a debt I shouldn't have owed. If you want to repay my kindness, then clean, scrub, and bow like the maid you are. That's your thank you, Nana." At 6 years old, Nana stood by the doorway with her tiny hands clenched around a rag, her body trembling as Madame Francis's only son, Daniel, boarded a flight abroad. He was just 10, yet already treated like royalty, while she remained barefoot on the cold tiles, dressed in simple gown cleaning the furniture in the sitting room. From that day she knew what her life was meant to be. A shadow, a servant, a nobody. And as the years passed, the beatings became fewer. Not because Madame Francis grew softer, but because the silence and glares spoke louder than slaps. Nana learned to suffer in quiet. She smiled while broken, served while bleeding inside, and stood when her legs screamed to sit. But nothing could prepare her for the day Madame Francis would look her in the eyes and say, with a voice colder than death, "Don't be stupid, Nana. Don't ever see this as your world. You're just an abandoned stain we took in. Don't mistake my pity for your placement. Stay in your lane, girl." And with that, every hope Nana had ever dared to grow was yanked from the soil and crushed beneath a heel. By the time Nana turned 10, her childhood was already a myth, a dream she never got to live. But Madame Francis made sure her reality would be even darker. One afternoon, dressed in her usual fine lace and gold earrings that danced with every smug movement, Madame Francis stood at the center of the living room and addressed her 3 housemaids. With a smirk on her lips and venom in her voice, she announced, "You're all dismissed. My girl is big now, strong, sharp. Her hands can mop, sweep, scrub floors, wash toilets, pound yam, and clean every inch of this house if I command her to." The maids stood frozen, their eyes darting toward Nana, who stood by the wall, barefoot, trembling in silence. "Why should I be wasting money paying you girls when I've raised a housemaid under my roof for 10 years? My charity ends here." She turned to Nana with a thin, mocking smile. "You want to pay me back, don't you? This is how. Serve me. This is your life." That was the day Nana's real servitude began. From dawn till midnight, she worked like a machine. No praise, no kindness, no break. She washed heavy curtains until her small fingers cracked and bled. She fetched water in buckets twice her size, scrubbing the compound under the hot sun. If she slowed down, she was slapped. If she broke a plate, she wasn't fed. If she ever dared cry, Madame Francis would grab her by the chin and sneer, "Do you want to go back to the gutter where we found you? Maybe the pigs will raise you better." There were days Nana fainted beside the washing line, days her knees gave out while she scrubbed the tiles, but nobody helped her up. No one checked on her. To the outside world, Madame Francis had adopted a poor orphan girl out of love, but behind those gates, she had raised a slave. And Nana learned early. This wasn't a home. It was a prison with fancy curtains. That same evening, after the 3 maids dragged their bags through the front gate and disappeared down the dusty road, the house fell in chilling silence. Nana stood by the kitchen door, clutching the hem of her dress, her feet swollen and sore from hours of cleaning. But there was a flicker of courage in her chest, a soft, trembling hope she hadn't dared to voice until now. She walked slowly to the living room where Madame Francis sat, fanning herself and sipping fruit juice from a tall glass, the TV casting soft light across her perfectly powdered face. With a shaky voice, Nana whispered, "Thank you so much for giving me life, Ma. For everything. Her eyes dropped to the floor, her hands nervously wringing the edge of her dress. "Please, can I go to school, Ma? I want to learn. I want to go to school." There was a pause, a stillness. Then a loud, blinding slap landed across Nana's face so hard, she stumbled backward and crashed into the wall, her cheek burning and her ears ringing. Madame Frances stood up, eyes wide with fury. "Are you out of your mind, you ungrateful thing? Do you think this is an orphanage? Do I look like your mother?" She stepped closer, towering over the trembling girl. "What do you need school for, So you can sit in classrooms and pretend to be something you're not? You think they teach housemaids how to scrub toilets in school?" Nana bit her lips to stop them from quivering. Her knees shook, but she didn't dare cry. Madame Frances leaned in, her voice a poisonous whisper. "Let me make something clear to you today. Your life began the day I picked you off the ground like a dirty rag. And it will end the day I decide you're no longer useful. So stop dreaming nonsense." She picked up her slipper and threw it at Nana. "Now get back to work, and if I ever hear you mention school again, ever, I will throw you out into the streets naked, just like you came." That night, as Nana scrubbed the kitchen floor on her bruised knees, she quietly wept, her tears falling silently into the soapy water. Not because of the slap, not because of the harsh words, but because she had dared to hope. And hope in that house was a crime. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. But the fire in Nana's heart didn't die. It burned silently, secretly, beneath the ashes of pain. She never spoke of school again. She never asked for anything. But at night, when the house fell silent and Madame Frances had gone to bed, Nana would quietly tiptoe to the dusty wooden shelf in the old storage room. There, behind cobwebbed furniture and forgotten boxes, lay a stack of Daniel's old textbooks, left behind the day he flew abroad. Nana had found them months ago, hidden like treasure. A torn English textbook, a stained math workbook, a tattered alphabet chart with scribbles all over it. They became her school. She would light a small floor, her eyes straining in the dim light, lips moving slowly as she whispered the words, A for apple, B for ball, C for cat. She traced every letter with her finger until her hands grew numb. She copied every word onto scraps of brown paper she found in the trash. And each time Madame Frances sent her to clean the sitting room, she'd secretly pause for a few seconds, just to watch the end of a cartoon teaching letters or numbers on the TV. She memorized them like hymns. Sometimes, when no one was home, she'd sit cross-legged in front of the television, eyes wide, mouthing along to the lessons. It is a cup. Go to bed. 1, 2, 3. Her pronunciation was clumsy, her writing was shaky, but every night she grew better, smarter, braver. Her mind was a sponge, and though no teacher stood before her, she taught herself with raw hunger, with every ounce of willpower she had left. She didn't have a school bag. She didn't have a uniform. But she had something stronger, a dream that refused to die. And so, while Madame Frances slept soundly, dreaming of wealth and pride, Nana sat in the dark, holding a broken pencil, teaching herself to read. Nana grew into a slender young girl, quiet, obedient, with eyes too deep for her age. Her skin, once soft, now bore the invisible marks of labor and sorrow. Her hands had grown rough, not from age, but from years of scrubbing, carrying, mopping, and enduring. Madame Frances never softened, and neither did her friends. Whenever they came over, loud, overdressed, and dripping with perfume and arrogance, Nana knew her nightmare was about to worsen. They never saw her as a girl, not as a child, not even as human. To them, she was a shadow that should only appear when called and disappear when dismissed. She was you, girl. This thing, the maid. If she served the wrong drink or didn't pour fast enough, they would shove the glass back at her chest or, worse, dump the contents all over her without flinching. Are you blind? One would snap, flicking wine off her own silk blouse as though Nana's hands had cursed it. You goat. I said lemon water, not ordinary water. Are you stupid? Another once flung hot tea across the floor because Nana brought sugar instead of honey. This is why you people remain useless. Bush girl. They'd laugh, sip their wine, and toss insults like confetti. And Madame Frances? She never defended her. She never asked them to stop. In fact, she'd often chime in with a mocking smile. Don't mind her. I picked her from the street like a rat. She doesn't know her left from right. Sometimes they'd ask, "Why do you even keep her? She's not even beautiful. Her body is all bones." And Madame Frances would casually reply, "Because I'm a kind woman. Nobody else would take her." Each time, Nana would bow her head and whisper, "I'm sorry, Ma. I'm sorry, Auntie." Even when her heart broke, even when her cheeks were wet, even when she wanted to scream, she would go back to the kitchen, drenched and humiliated, and keep washing the dishes with tears swimming in her eyes. But at night, she still opened those old crumpled pages, still read and did some calculations. Because even though they laughed at her like she was nothing, she was becoming something. In silence, in pain, in secret. Days turned into months, months into years, and there came a warm afternoon, the kind that made the walls of the house sweat in silence. Nana was in the backyard, hand-washing a heap of Madame Frances's lace fabrics, her fingers wrinkled and raw, when the loud voice of her madam echoed through the house. She was on a long call, the kind she always took with a glass of wine in hand and her nose in the air. "Daniel, I don't know how much longer you want to drag this issue with me." Her heels clicked sharply against the tiled floor as she paced the sitting room, frustration bubbling beneath her carefully polished words. "I sent you abroad for a reason, not just to enjoy yourself and come back empty-handed. I wanted you to build a life of wealth, and that you have achieved, so it's time to settle down." Nana froze for a moment, the name Daniel sending a flicker through her chest. She hadn't seen him since she was 6, he was 10 when he left. But she still remembered the quiet boy who once gave her his leftover biscuits under the table when no one was looking. Madame Frances's voice sharpened. "It was my decision to send you abroad, and I don't regret it. But now I'm asking you to come back home and pick a wife. I need to see the girl, ask questions, run background checks. Marriage is important, Daniel, and I won't take any rubbish from you." On the other end, Daniel's laugh crackled softly through the speaker. "Mommy, when will you change?" he said, his voice calm but amused. "Let me marry whoever I choose. I'm the one who'll live with her, not you." But Madame Frances wasn't laughing. She snapped like a whip. "And I am your mother. As long as I'm alive, I have the final say on this matter. Do you hear me, Daniel?" Her voice trembled with authority. "You will come back home. You will choose a wife with my approval, under my eyes. I didn't raise you to make foolish decisions." Then silence. Nana, peeking through the hallway, watched Madame Frances end the call with a hiss and toss her phone on the couch. Her face was tight with pride and control. The Queen had spoken. Her son had no choice. Back in the backyard, Nana bent her head over the basin again, her mind spinning. She didn't know why her heart suddenly began to race. But something deep inside whispered, "Daniel is coming home." So on a Thursday afternoon, the air felt heavy, as though the house itself was holding its breath. Madame Frances had been fussing since morning. She'd made Nana scrub the floor twice, polish every doorknob until it shined like gold, and air out the guest room, even though everyone knew Daniel would never sleep in any room but his childhood suite upstairs. Nana, now 20, had grown into a tall, slender girl with quiet eyes, still in faded clothes, still with cracked fingers from years of cleaning, but there was something new in her gaze. A hidden light. A soft dignity that even Madame's harshest insults could no longer fully dim. And then, the gate creaked open. The sound of tires rolling in. Nana was wiping her hands on the towel when she heard the car door shut. Footsteps. And then, his voice. "Mommy!" Madame Frances shrieked with joy and rushed out of the house like a teenager. "My baby!" she cried, wrapping her arms around the tall, handsome man in jeans and sunglasses. Daniel had changed. No longer the boy who left years ago, he was now a man, broad-shouldered, clean-cut, charming. But what stood out more than his appearance was the softness in his eyes, the calm confidence in his walk. He pulled down his glasses and scanned the compound with curiosity. "It looks smaller than I remember," he said with a chuckle. Then his gaze landed on her. "Nana." She had stepped back into the shadows instinctively, unsure whether to bow, curtsy, or simply vanish. Her hands trembled against the tray she carried, their eyes locked. For a moment, nothing moved. His smile faded slowly, not in shock, but recognition. There was something strangely familiar about her face. Those eyes. Those eyes hadn't changed. But before he could speak, Madame Frances stepped in. "Come inside, my baby. You must be tired from your flight. Let's not waste time. Dinner is almost ready." Nana dipped her head and quietly walked away. But as she disappeared into the kitchen, she felt it. He had seen her, and he remembered her. He just didn't know yet how much the past and present were about to collide. "This is a brother I never had," she muttered to herself. That evening, the dining table gleamed. Silverware polished, candles lit, expensive wine breathing in crystal glasses. Madame Frances had made sure everything was perfect for her son. Daniel sat at the head of the table, fresh from his long flight, but alert, observant. He smiled politely as his mother bragged about the food, the house, the guests she planned to invite now that her foreign son was home. But something tugged at the edge of his attention. She wasn't at the table. The girl he'd seen earlier. She looked so familiar, but different. There was a tiredness behind her eyes, a silence that felt heavy. He cleared his throat gently. "Mummy, who's the girl I saw earlier? The one in the kitchen?" Madame Frances paused midway into sipping her wine. She gave a careless wave. "Oh, that one?" she scoffed. "That's just Nana, my housemaid. I raised her out of pure pity. She was dumped at the estate gate like a stray. Community begged me to take her in. Remember, she was 6 when you were 10. "That same small street baby," Daniel frowned. "So she still lives here?" "Of course. Where else would a thing like her live?" She chuckled dryly. "But don't let her face deceive you. That one can be stubborn when she wants to. You ask her to wash a cup, and she wants to go and read ABC, as if education is for her type." Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. "She goes to school? God forbid. I feed her, clothe her, shelter her. That's more than enough. Why would I waste money sending someone else's child to school?" There was a long pause. Daniel didn't respond. He simply nodded and kept chewing slowly, but his mind was no longer on the food. That girl, Nana, wasn't just a maid. There was something in the way she looked at him, a calm pride in her sadness, a voice that hadn't spoken yet, but was burning to, and something in his gut twisted. Later that night, as everyone settled in, Daniel stepped out of his room and walked down the quiet hallway. From the opening of the kitchen door, he saw her, Nana, kneeling beside a pile of laundry, eyes drooping with sleep. He watched her from a distance. The dim bulb flickered above her, casting shadows across her face, but she didn't notice him. She was lost in a world no one gave her permission to have. Daniel swallowed hard. A few days later, at midnight, the house had gone silent. Even the walls seemed to be sleeping, wrapped in the hush of the night. Nana sat alone in the small corner of the kitchen. Her eyes scanned the old, torn textbook resting on her lap. It was one of Daniel's childhood books. She'd secretly kept it safe over the years, like a piece of her own childhood no one could steal. She was tracing the letters with her finger, mouthing the words quietly when a soft voice spoke behind her. "You still read at night." Nana gasped and turned quickly, almost knocking over the reading lamp. Daniel stood by the door, arms folded gently, watching her with a calm expression. She froze. I'm sorry, sir," she stammered, rising quickly. "I didn't know you were." "Relax," he said, stepping forward. "It's just me, Nana. You don't have to call me sir." Her lips trembled slightly. She didn't know what to say. Daniel smiled. "You remember me, don't you?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. You were always kind to me before you left." There was a silence between them, long but not uncomfortable. It felt like a thread was slowly being tied again after many years of being cut. "You used to follow me around like a little puppy," Daniel said with a soft laugh. "You even tried to climb a tree once just because I said I could do it. You fell and cried for hours." A small, reluctant smile crept onto Nana's face. "You gave me your sweets after," she said quietly, "even though Madame was angry." Daniel sat on the small stool opposite her, eyes full of something warm, something sad. "You were like the little sister I never had," he said. "I didn't understand why things changed when I left, but now I'm back, and it's clear." Nana lowered her gaze. "Nothing really changed," she whispered. "You just grew up in a better world. I stayed here." Her words sliced through the quiet like glass. Daniel's heart tightened. He looked around the kitchen and smiled. "You actually worked so hard to keep this place." "Have you ever been to school?" he asked. She shook her head. "I teach myself. I watch programs when I'm alone. I read old books, yours mostly. It helps me breathe." Daniel looked at her, really looked, and in that moment he realized she was brilliance, buried under chains, a flame that had never been given a place to burn. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and opened a reading app. "Then let me help you breathe better," he said, handing it to her. "Read this. I'll show you more tomorrow. But promise me something." She looked up, surprised. "What?" "Don't ever stop learning. Even if the whole world says you can't, you already are." Nana clutched the phone gently like it was sacred. Her eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them back. And for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. And overtime. Madame Frances begins to suspect the growing bond between Daniel and Nana. It all started subtly. The way Daniel looked at Nana, the way he paused whenever she walked past, the soft tone in his voice when he asked her to bring water or when he helped her pick up something she dropped. It wasn't just kindness, it was care. Madame Frances noticed, and it made her blood boil. She had spent years building her life, her image, her legacy. And no little charity case girl would ruin that for her. Not when Daniel was supposed to marry someone from a family of wealth and name. So one sunny afternoon, as Daniel sat at the balcony reading from his tablet, Madame Frances joined him with her glass of wine and forced a smile. "Daniel, my dear, don't you think it's time you started going out more?" He looked up. "Out?" "Yes. Go for events, business dinners, networking parties, places where you can meet responsible, educated women. Real wives, Daniel. Not some desperate girl with no name or family. I want you married, quickly. Enough of the waiting." Daniel chuckled softly and closed his tablet. "I don't think that will be necessary, Mom." Madame Frances blinked. "What do you mean?" Daniel looked up at her, calm but resolute. "Because I've already found someone. I know who I want to spend my life with. And she's right here." The glass in Madame Frances' hand froze midair. "You what?" she said slowly. "Yes," he said, smiling gently. "She may not come from riches, but she has strength, intelligence, and a heart that hasn't been corrupted. She makes me feel something real, something I can't find at all those events you keep mentioning." Madame Frances dropped her wine glass. It shattered. "Wait, wait!" Her voice rose. "Don't tell me you're talking about that girl, Nana? That maid? That charity case? Daniel!" "Are you mad?" Daniel's face didn't flinch. "I've made my choice, Mom. She's beneath you." Madame Frances spat, eyes wide with fury. "She was picked off the estate floor like trash. I took her in like a stray dog, washed her, fed her, clothed her, and now she dares stand beside you? In what world?" Daniel stood slowly. His voice was lower, but every word carried weight. "In this world, Mom. In my world. You raised me to no value, and I see it in her more than in any of those girls you want to parade in front of me." Madame Frances grabbed his wrist. "I won't allow it." Daniel looked her dead in the eye. "Then you may have to learn how to watch it happen." He gently pulled away from her grip and walked back into the house, leaving Madame Frances shaking with rage, disbelief, and the terrifying realization her control was slipping. And Nana? Nana was no longer invisible. Meanwhile, the kitchen was warm with the aroma of boiling yam and stew. Nana hummed faintly to herself, her apron tied neatly around her waist as she stirred the pot. This was her sanctuary, her little space of purpose. She didn't know that elsewhere in the house, a storm was already tearing through her world. Upstairs, Madame Frances was like a woman possessed. She stormed into Nana's room without knocking. Her eyes scanned every inch with pure disgust. The makeup, the dresses, the shoes, the mirror, the neat little collection of second-hand wigs. With wild hands, she began pulling everything out. "So this is how you lured my son?" she hissed. "Looking like a polished harlot in clothes I bought?" She tore open the drawer, dragged out Nana's clothes, yanked off the wigs, stuffed everything in a basket, like it was garbage. Without hesitation, she stormed to the backyard and threw it all into a metal drum. The matchstick struck once, twice. Then flames rose. Back in the kitchen, Nana sniffed. Smoke? She dropped the ladle and ran outside, following the burning scent that thickened with every step. And then she saw it. Her life going up in flames. Her mouth opened in horror, and a scream escaped. "No! No! Please, Ma! Please!" she cried, running to the fire, trying to pull what she could, only to get pushed away by Madame Frances. "Touch it, and I'll throw you in next," she snapped, eyes glinting with cruelty. Then she laughed, a sharp, wicked sound. "So you think my son loves you because you look like a woman now, huh? Because of these cheap dresses and fake hair? Don't worry, I'm getting you rags tomorrow. Dirty ones. The ones that match your true status, orphan maid. Nana dropped to her knees. Her tears fell hard. Her hands trembled. Her voice cracked. Why are you doing this to me? What did I ever do wrong? She sobbed as the fire devoured the last of her possessions, the only pieces of dignity she had. That was when Daniel walked in. He froze at the sight of the fire. At Nana on her knees, at his mother standing above her like a queen over ashes. Mom, what is this? Madame Frances turned startled. Oh, Daniel, I was just... No, Mom, this is pure wickedness. His voice thundered across the backyard. This is the same girl you picked up as a baby. The same one who served you all her life. And now you burn her things? Her only things? Madame Frances stepped back, caught off guard. But Daniel didn't wait. He rushed to Nana, pulled her up by the hand gently, wiping her tear-stained cheek. You don't deserve this, he whispered. Then louder, Mom, excuse us, we'll be back. He didn't wait for a response. He took her hand, firm, protective, and walked her straight out of the compound. 30 minutes later, they arrived at a luxury boutique in the heart of town. The attendants stared when Daniel walked in. Everyone knew who he was. Give her everything she wants, he told them. No limits. Let her try on everything. Nana stood frozen at first, still trembling, still processing the pain. But Daniel turned to her and said, Let me give you back what was stolen. And so she stepped in, dress after dress, shoe after show. She stood in front of the mirror in soft silks, sparkling earrings, and real designer heels. For the first time, she saw a version of herself she had only dreamed of. And behind her stood Daniel, smiling, not at her looks, but at her light. The next morning, it was 3:30 a.m. The compound was still, the moon casting pale light over the house, but that calm was shattered by loud, angry fists pounding on a door. Bang, bang, bang. Get up, useless lazy hand. Nana startled awake. Her eyes fluttered open, heart pounding. Bang. Do you want me to break this door down before you wake up? Nana scrambled off her mattress and opened the door. And before she could fully stand, Madame Frances slapped her across the face, so hard that her cheek turned red immediately. I want all my clothes washed this morning, dried and ironed before sunrise. Move it. Nana clutched her cheek in shock, tears already building in her eyes. She managed to say softly, Ma, I washed and ironed all your clothes 2 days ago. They're all arranged in your wardrobe. That only made it worse. Slap! Another heavy hit, this time on the other side of her face. Did I ask you to speak? You useless garbage. Are you trying to talk back at me now? Because a boy looked your way, go out there and start washing before I drag you like a goat. Nana held back a cry, nodded quickly, and hurried outside to the tap. Her face throbbed, her eyes blurred with tears. The stack of clothing was already dumped by the tap in a large basin. It was almost double the usual amount. As if Madame Frances had emptied not just her wardrobe, but her neighbor's. She knelt by the basin with trembling hands, turned the tap, and began soaking the first pile. Her fingers were already numb from the cold when she heard soft footsteps behind her. She didn't turn, her shame too heavy. But the voice that followed melted the weight on her chest. Nana, don't worry, we're doing today's chores together. She turned slowly. It was Daniel. Standing there in joggers and a hoodie, barefoot with his sleeves rolled up. Nana stood up in shock, wiping her tears quickly. No, please don't. Your mother. But he shook his head gently. I said I'm doing them with you. You didn't ask for this life. You didn't deserve any of it. He dipped his hands into the water and pulled out one of the soaked wrappers, rubbing it gently with the soap. Nana just stared, unable to believe what her eyes were seeing. This was the same boy who used to play with her when she was small, now kneeling beside her, helping her wash clothes as though they were equals. And in that moment, for the first time in her life, someone stood beside her, not out of pity, but out of love. From the upstairs balcony, Madame Frances stood in the dark, watching. Her grip tightened around the railing, her eyes narrowing. She wasn't going to let this girl win. Not now. Not ever. As soon as the morning chores were done, Daniel's smile disappeared. He didn't say a word to Nana, just handed her a bottle of water, got into his car, and drove off in anger. Late that afternoon, Madame Frances sat in the living room sipping juice, her heart still boiling from the morning's event. Then she heard the car horn. She peeked through the curtain. Daniel had returned, but he wasn't alone. Two well-dressed young ladies stepped out of the car with him. Their makeup was subtle, their dressing neat and professional. Madame Frances quickly adjusted her scarf and stood upright, her face lit up with fake joy. "Anne!" she exclaimed. "Maybe he has finally come to his senses. One of these girls must be the one." Daniel entered the house, flashing his charming smile. "Mommy!" he greeted warmly. "My son! Welcome, my dear. Who are these beautiful ladies?" Daniel stepped aside, gesturing politely. "These two ladies work with a professional domestic service agency. I hired them for you." Madame Frances blinked. "Anne?" Her smile began to fade. "You hired—" Daniel continued firmly. "They're not just any girls. They're trained, they're disciplined, and they're being paid direct by me every month. So from today, you'll no longer need Nana's hands in this house." Before she could process it, Daniel added, "Also, I have good news. Nana and I are traveling this evening. Her travel documents and mine are ready. We're leaving the country together." The glass cup dropped from Madame Frances's hand and shattered on the floor. "What?" Her eyes widened, her face pale. "You mean to tell me you're choosing that illiterate girl over me? Over your mother?" Daniel looked at her with calm determination. "Mom," he sighed, "you never really gave her a chance. But still, she educated herself. Under your nose." He turned to the corridor and called softly, "Nana, please come." Nana stepped into the room. Her steps were unsure, her dress simple but elegant. She held a rolled magazine in her hands. Daniel smiled and said, "Go ahead, baby, read the article on page 4. Nana opened the magazine, cleared her throat gently, and began to read. Her voice was clear, smooth, confident. She paused at commas, emphasized where needed. Madame Frances stood there, speechless, her mouth slightly ajar. This girl she mocked was reading like a professional. Daniel turned back to her and said softly, "You see, Mom, she is not an illiterate. She picked up my old books. She watched educational shows while scrubbing your floors. She taught herself every letter, and today she reads better than some graduates." Tears welled in Madame Frances's eyes, but they were not from regret. They were from defeat. Daniel continued, "I'm sorry, but I can't live without her. I tried to respect your wishes, but love doesn't follow protocol. And don't worry, we won't do anything here in the country. Your social status is safe." He walked over to Nana, held her hand with pride. "That's why I'm taking her far away from here, away from insults, from pain, from the place that almost destroyed her soul." He kissed Madame Frances on the cheek and whispered, "Thank you, Mommy, for raising her, even if harshly. But this is goodbye." And with that he turned with Nana, as the two new maids stood frozen in shock. Madame Frances slumped into her chair, staring at the door as it closed behind them. The room felt empty, cold, silent. She had lost. And it wasn't just a girl. She had lost her son. When Daniel first took Nana's hand and led her through the airport gates, Nana kept blinking, as if she were dreaming. The city was nothing like anything Nana had ever imagined. But it wasn't a dream. It was her life now. Daniel enrolled her in a proper adult literacy program. He bought her a sleek laptop and a private tutor. In just a few weeks, her speech became sharper, her writing cleaner, and her confidence unshakable. She began dressing like royalty, not because she had to, but because she now believed she was worth it. Daniel gave her love, protection, and space to grow. He treated her not like a rescued soul, but like a queen. They dined in places she once only saw in magazines. She traveled, she laughed, she breathed freely for the first time in her life. 3 months later, one quiet evening as they sat on the balcony of their new home watching the city lights flicker like stars, Nana's phone buzzed. It was a call from Nigeria. She stared at it for a moment. "Pick it," Daniel said gently. "Maybe it's time." She answered, her heart thumping. "Hello?" A familiar voice came through, weaker, slower, broken. "Nana, it's me, Madame Frances." There was silence. Then she continued, I just want you to know I've learnt my lesson." "I was blind, Nana. I thought giving you food and a roof was enough. I should have been kind. I should have loved you. I should have given you the benefits I gave my son, because you deserved them." Her voice cracked. "I thought I was cheating you, not knowing I was shooting myself in the leg." Tears rolled down Nana's cheeks, silently. Daniel reached out and held her hand. "Please, forgive me. You are not just my daughter-in-law now. You are my daughter." There was a pause. When again, "Can I see your face, Nana?" Both of you." Nana didn't speak immediately. Her throat was tight. There was silence after Madame Frances's trembling voice faded on the phone. Nana wiped her tears and took a deep breath, staring out at the soft golden lights of the city. Daniel was quiet, waiting. He wasn't going to make the decision for her. And then, Nana softly said, "Ma, I forgive you." A long, stunned pause echoed on the other end. "I forgive you. Not because everything you did didn't hurt, because it did. You broke me in ways I couldn't explain. You made me feel worthless, invisible, unloved." Her voice cracked. "But I choose to forgive you, because I deserve peace, and because you gave me one beautiful thing, Daniel." Madame Frances let out a broken sob, then Daniel gently leaned toward the phone. "Mom," he said, "we are okay now. We've healed, and we want the same for you." "Thank you," Madame Frances whispered. "Thank you both. I don't deserve your kindness." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe you didn't before, but you do now, for being brave enough to say sorry." 2 weeks later, a different kind of reunion. The doorbell rang. Nana opened the door slowly, unsure of what to expect. There stood Madame Frances, no makeup, no designer clothes, no bodyguards, just a woman, looking older than Nana remembered. She stared at Nana for a long time, then broke down in tears. "You're so beautiful. You always were. I just never looked at you." Nana hugged her. For the first time, not as a servant, not as a charity case, but as a daughter. Daniel watched from behind, arms crossed, his eyes misty. They spent 2 weeks together. Madame Frances apologized again, this time in person, without pride, without excuses. Again, she held Nana's hand through dinner. She smiled genuinely when Daniel kissed her forehead. She asked about Nana's studies, her dreams, her new life, and for the first time in years, they all laughed together. Before flying back, Madame Frances left a small envelope on Nana's reading table. It read, "Dear Nana, you changed me. You showed me what grace looks like in human form. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for becoming more than I ever believed you could be. And thank you for loving my son the way I never loved you. Forever, Frances." Hello, family. What a journey. From being abandoned at the estate gate to becoming a self-taught, strong, and graceful woman, Nana's story is a reminder that your beginning doesn't define your end. Advice and moral lessons. Number 1. Never look down on anyone. The one you treat like trash today might become the light in your darkest hour tomorrow. Number 2. Kindness is never wasted. Madame Frances learned too late that love builds, but pride destroys. Number 3. Forgive, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Nana forgave her abuser, not because she forgot the pain, but because she chose freedom. Number 4. Educate yourself, even in silence. Nana studied in secret, and that became her greatest weapon. Number 5. Support love that comes from the heart, not status. Daniel followed his heart and found his true partner in life. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more powerful and emotional stories. Like this video if you believe in second chances. Comment your favorite scene or line in your own language too. We love hearing from you. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that they matter, no matter how life began for them. Until next time, family, stay kind, stay strong, and never stop believing in yourself.